as big as a hen's egg. The discussion. One day, some children found in a ravine an object shaped like a grain of corn with a groove down the middle, but as large as a hen's egg. A traveler passing by saw it. He bought it from the children for a penny. He took it to the town and sold it to the king as it was a curious one. The king called all his wise men and told them to find out what the thing was. The wise men thought and thought, but couldn't make head or tail of it. A few days later, when the thing was lying on a windowsill, a hen flew in and pecked at it till she made a hole in it. Then everyone saw that it was a grain of coin. The wise men went to the king and said, "It's a grain of corn." At this, the king was much surprised. He ordered the learned men to find out when and where such corn grew. The learned men pondered again and searched in their books, but could find nothing about it. So they returned to the king and said, "We can give you no answer. There is nothing about it in our books. You will have to ask the peasants. Perhaps some of them may have heard from their fathers when and where a grain grew to such a size." So the king gave orders that some very old peasants should be brought before him. His servants found one such man and brought him to the king. He was old and bent, pale and toothless. He could just manage to totter into the king's palace with the help of crutches. The king showed him the grain, but the old man could hardly see it. He took it, however, and felt it with his hands. The king questioned him, saying, "Can you tell us, old man, where such grains grew? Have you ever bought such corn or sown it in your fields?" The old man was so deaf that he could hardly hear what the king said and only understood with great difficulty. "No," he answered at last, "I never sowed or reaped any like this in my fields, nor did I ever buy any such. When we bought corn, the grains were always small as that are now. But you might ask my father. He might know where such grains grew." The great grandfather. The king sent for the old man's father, and he was brought before him. He came walking on one crutch. The king showed him the grain, and the old peasant was still able to see, took a good look at it. And the king asked him, "Can you tell us, old man, where a corn like this is used to grow? Have you ever bought anything like it or sown it in your fields?" Though the old man was rather hard of hearing, he could hear better than his son. "No," he said, "I never sowed or reaped any grain like this in my field, As for buying, I never bought any for it my time. Money was not yet in use. Everyone grew his own corn, and when there was any need, we shared it with one another. I do not know where such kind of corn grew. Ours was larger and yielded more flour than the present day grain, but I never saw any like this. I have, however, heard my father say that in his time the grains grew larger and yielded more flour. You had better ask him. So the king sent for the old man's father. They found him and brought him before the king. He entered walking easily and without crutches. His eyes were clear, his hearing good, and he spoke distinctly. The king showed him the grain, and the old grandfather looked at it and turned it about in his hand. It is long since I saw such a fine grain, said he, and he bit a piece off and tasted it. It's the very same kind, he added. The corn. Tell me, grandfather, began the king, when and where such corn grown? Have you ever bought any like it, or sown it in your fields? And the old man replied, corn like this used to grow everywhere in my time. I lived on corn like this in the days of my youth and fed others on it. It was such a grain that we used to sow, reap, and thresh. And the king asked, tell me, grandfather, did you buy it anywhere, or did you grow it all yourself? The old man smiled. In my time, he answered, no one ever thought of such a sin as buying or selling bread, and we knew nothing of money. Each man had enough corn of his own. Then tell me, grandfather, asked the king, where was your field? Where did you grow corn like this? And grandfather answered, my field was God's earth. Wherever I ploughed, it was my field. Land was free. It was a thing no man called his own. Labor was the only thing men called their own. Answer me two more questions, said the king. The first is, why did the earth bear such a grain then and has ceased to do so now? And the second is, why does your grandson walk with two crutches, your son with one, and you yourself with none? Your eyes are bright, your teeth are sound, and your speech are clear and pleasant to the ear. How have these things come about? And the old man answered, these things are so because men have ceased to live by their own labor and have taken to depending on the labor of others. In olden time, men lived according to God's law. They had what they owned and coveted not what others had produced.